little bit of my background is that I studied architecture in college and sort of moved on to architecture firms during the recession, and staying on there for a couple of years and met my then boyfriend, now husband, and we moved to Chicago. And it was during the initial couple of months when I moved there, I was trying to network and look for a job. And the economy was still kind of shaky then, so I just sort of went all out to started networking like crazy. And I met this guy who runs a nonprofit, Urban Habitat Chicago, and he introduced me and asked me to go volunteer at his nonprofit. And Mike is his name, and Mike turned out to be a very interesting person, and he is the one essentially who started me to go down this rabbit hole of plants and how plants can improve our future if used properly. And so today the topic is urban farming. And in essence, we're gonna presume that we probably talk more on growing vegetables. And if people are interested, I could talk a little bit about animal husbandry, but that's not quite my specialty, although I know a little bit about urban chicken and goat raising. So, and before I start, I want to thank Cafe Philo for inviting me and giving me this opportunity, and everybody coming here to my musing. And the structure will be, I will probably go through a little bit of the history of farming and how people live in urban setting in very, very broad stroke, and then going to urban farming and comparing rural farming and urban farming, and then go through a couple of case studies of interesting urban farms that I've seen in Chicago. So, and then we'll open up for questions at the end. So thank you. So the topic is go pick your dinner and how urban farming can change the way we live. So farming in the 1800s is essentially a mom and pop shop. Like you have the family with lots of kids and everybody participate in the daily chores on the farm. And the separation of labor is usually delegated to the men, or usually the father or the fatherly figure will be responsible for the cash crop. So potato, corn, tobacco, down south, cotton. And the women are delegated to provide for their family. So the women are responsible for running her own vegetable garden solely for the consumption for the family. And also on the side, they will do chicken, pigs, etc. And this mic just turned on. Anyway.
We can't hear you without it.
Okay, so it's not for recording? Well, I don't know, but anyway. So then with that, here is the Mountain Farm Museum, the Great Smoky Mountain. So in the Appalachian, this is a lot of those little farmsteads that you could see. And if you ever go there, they actually put together what a typical farmstead would be like. So here you see there's the main building, the living quarter over here, and in the middle there's the barn where all the horses and chicken and pigs are kept. And you have this fenced-in area, and within you could see a little bit of the plants because the fence is there to keep out the livestock from eating the produce. And so that's the typical farmstead in the older days, how they would operate. And once the annual cash crop harvest is completed, the men usually go into town, sell their crop, and bring back either money, but most of the time the commodities that they cannot produce themselves, such as salt, coffee, flour, etc. So then, and then fast forward many years, with the industrialization, we start to develop machineries, and people start to move to urban settings. So with the loss of the labor forces on the farm, people start to depend or rely more and more on automated machines to do the farm work, because if you have 10 kids all helping out, it's much easier to manage like a couple of acres and produce enough to support your family. But if most of your kids decide to go to town, literally, they cannot maintain the farm anymore. So people start buying machines and sort of become a vicious cycle, because machinery is usually not affordable to the average farmer. So the companies that make those tractors and combines, they decided to start a business model. It's like, we will give you a loan and give you this machine, and you just have to pay us back. But in order for the farmer to make enough profit to pay them back, they usually have to expand their zone of planting of a certain crop. For example, if they buy a corn harvesting machine, they cannot just have 2 acres of corn anymore. They need to have hundreds of acres of corn in order to utilize the harvesting combine efficiently to make enough money to pay back their loan. So that is in terms how we slowly approach this modern farming model, where every farm, they have only one cash crop and no longer producing a variety of crops for themselves, because they could go to the store. And here is kind of the effect of industrialization of the farming technique. You have the circular irrigation tractor. So essentially, that's the most efficient way, according to the manufacturers, to irrigate the field. And the farmers buy into it, and like, if you ever flew through the Tennessee area, that's kind of, when you look down, that's the result of people buying into monoculture. And this, in its own sense, is problematic, because if somebody plants all corn, of course they are gonna try to find the strain of corn that is most productive and most disease resistant. And slowly throughout the years, they became the variety of corn species became phased out. So, and then in come Monsanto, where they both said they have those super corn where nothing can, all the diseases are not able to affect that special corn, and kind of goes down this downward spiral of everybody only buy the disease-resistant, genetic modified corn in order to produce as much as possible, in order to earn as much possible to continue their profit cycle. So that's kind of the very broad stroke farming history, like how the evolution happened throughout the years. And going to the urban setting, so urbanites, they do not have the land to farm and to produce the produce anymore as they used to in the older farmstead. So they rely on public markets to supply for their family. So a typical housewife back in the early 1900s, they will go to the market every day to buy their produce for the day. And you have the milk delivery man delivering fresh milk every day, and you will stop by the bakers and the butchers for your dinner needs. And this, in turn, has changed throughout the years as the invention of refrigerator, AC, and TV, as well as microwave. So with these four items, our lifestyle slowly changes to that the refrigerator, you're able to stockpile perishable food for a short-term period. And with the invention of TV, people no longer hang out in a common space or go to public performances. And with the microwave, the prominence of prepackaged food came into play, where you can pop it in and you have dinner ready in a couple of seconds. And then also, what's the fourth one? AC. Yeah, so with the invention of AC, that people are able to live in high rises without overheating in the summer. Because if you ever live in an apartment, like the top floor is always extremely warm, versus the basement is very cool. So houses back in the day, it's not tall, partially because of they're not able to structurally build something that tall, but also nobody wanted to live on the top floor if it's gonna be 90 degrees in there during the warmer seasons all the time. So the AC alleviated that, and cities become denser, and our lifestyle becomes faster. We look for conveniency more so than anything else. And so with that, so the produce unpackaged, if you could see here, slowly became much more packaged, prepared, and handled out of the sight of the consumer until we see this, and we think that's a notion of fresh produce. And if you go to supermarket now, this is actually quite common. So, yeah. And here, very interestingly, when I was preparing for this topic, I went on to the trade map, and where you could type in different criteria, and here is what I got for edible vegetables and certain roots and tubers category. And here the purple are the United States, which is what my query is for. And I asked for the amount of imported food from other countries to United States. So it's a little hard to see, but you could see this is from no import of food produce from the countries to the more than 2 million US dollars. And so you can see from the brown area, like Mexico is the #1 country that we import food from. And the second is Canada. And then actually the third one, it's washed out, but it's Peru and China. And the rest, Spain, I think, has a next runner-up of amount of food that we import. So, and this is only for fresh produce. So it kind of makes you wonder, like, what are we importing from Peru and China, and how much energy it takes to transport, put that onto a container and refrigerated container, mind you, and ship it over to us. So, and if you think about it, the process of packaging it and putting in a refrigerated car or container, shipping it takes at least a couple of weeks typically. And during that process, a lot of the produce became spoiled due to technical failure of the containers or the produce was picked too late to make it into our grocery store on time. So there is actually a huge amount of waste of food that we don't even see in grocery stores. And that's not to mention that when the grocery store, the expiration date comes by, they will also eliminate the actual food that, because for health reasons, they are required to throw away, despite it being still edible. So, and so one of the organizations that I came across while in Chicago, it's actually based in Tucson, Arizona, and because EPA noticed that there's a huge amount of waste in the food, so they issued a food recovery challenge to entities, and a group of students in University of Arizona, they took note and started an organization within the university to recover food waste from their student hall. And they started reaching out to the city of Tucson, and they soon realized Tucson is one of the bigger port of entry of fresh produce from Mexico. And I think they go through probably more than 2 million tons of produce every year that comes through Tucson area into different distribution centers in the United States. So with that, they have a sorting point of all the produce. So if the produce looks questionable while it is in Tucson, they eliminate it and put it in a landfill there to prevent additional loss of transportation costs. So the student organization is called Compost Cat. So their model is to take the waste products, the spoiled produce that was originally headed to landfill. They work with a farm in the reservation, Native American reservation, also working with City of Tucson. They started a business to turn those produce into compost and selling it. And they were such a success that they increased the food recovery from landfill by more than 1,000% within a year since its commencement in 2013. Here is a picture of what they do. So they will take the spoiled containers and containers of food, unpackage and lay it out, and just using the natural decomposing method to turn that into compost. But this gives you a sense of how much food that you don't see in grocery store that's being wasted.
That's for one day?
I don't know how much per day, but I have notes of how much exactly they did. So, and this is another photo. You can see the yellow squash that would never make onto the shelf. And throughout the United States, there are several cities that currently experience the same waste of the food stream. And then I'm going to jump into the idea of food desert. So while we have gluts of food in Tucson, where it's too much for anyone to consume in time, we have food deserts actually all throughout the United States. And I pulled up the greater Boston area so you could see. And the food desert, there were a couple of definitions in terms of the criteria that meets a food desert, but in this case, this map shows that the census tract where the low-income populations greater than 20% of that certain area, and where it's greater than half a mile to access fresh produce. So, but you could see like the amount of coverage within even just the Boston area. And this highlights the issue of food distribution failure. We cannot get food to people who need them, and we let them just rot away in other places. And that's overall the issues with the idea of importing food from other countries, and which is why urban farming can pose to alleviate some of these issues. So what is urban farming? So it's participating in production effort in the urban setting. So, and there's not limited to this, but some are community gardens where you get your own plot of land, or there's a managed group that you put in certain hours, and you might get certain produce back as the as exchange. Or you have organized farm entities, either for profit or non-profit. So a lot of restaurants start to grow their own food, or mostly herbs or garnishes, those high-value foods. And you also have backyard food production. Like my dad in New York, he has a little vegetable gardens because he likes a certain veggies that is costly to buy in the market. And or you have the climate control food production. Like you might have seen some hydroponic lettuces or like strawberries, and those are usually more energy intensive because you need to monitor the amount of bacteria to prevent the total blight of your crop. And then you have rooftop farms, which is something I will go in depth later. So, but these are a couple of types that how urban farming manifests itself. And just to get a sense of what's the difference between rural and urban farms. So in rural farms, it's typically bigger with many acres, and they have higher seasonal workers or family-based operation, and products typically monoculture. They have large plots of corn, large plots of wheat, large plots of like other produce, and those culture usually requires once or twice a year harvesting. And they do crop rotation, which means that they put corn down one year, and next year they might put peanuts, for example, or other grazing alfalfa, which is great for making animal feed while regenerating the soil. And the customers for those rural large farms typically are industry via the wholesalers, and some farms, if they deem it's viable, they will go to CSAs or farmers market. Although from me talking to a farmer friend, he says farmers market is the hardest way to make money for them because they had to wake up extremely early, they drive, and if it's raining, nobody comes to the farmers market, and they have to somehow get rid of all their produce because they don't have the storage facility for those big produce. So, and in urban farms, the difference will be it's typically a lot smaller, like 2 acres or less, and the labor is either hired, or if it's a nonprofit, they tend to try to engage the local communities, and the product is usually polyculture because of its size. It's not reasonable to plant corn, which usually is actually more efficient to do it in large swatches. So they would do lettuces or smaller areas of each crop. And so in that sense, with the polyculture, they have to constantly harvest different products. And those, instead of buying combines or tractors, they tend to use manual labor or small powered hand tools. And their customers typically are local residents, the farmers market, or some do engage in like soup kitchens or also restaurants, local restaurants. And then, but there are kind of the upside and the downside to urban farming. So the upside is, of course, fresher and tastier, more nutritious products. Jenny came to my house in Chicago once, and I told her to go pick some arugula for dinner salad. And she's like, "Oh my God, your arugula is very bitter," because the supermarket sold one. They had been picked quite a few days ago, and as it sits in the refrigerator, it starts to lose flavor. But if you actually pick the fresh leaf of arugula, it is pretty bitter, and it's actually an acquired taste. And another pro is like less energy involved in transportation, so you don't have to go through thousands of miles. Most will probably be mile or 2 miles from the source to the actual consumer of that product. And so and therefore there is less waste with the efficiency of transportation, and it cuts out the middleman, which can be a good thing depending on how you look at it. And another one is like they have the opportunity to engage the local community because of the proximity, and be able to educate our next generation on food production and how food comes to exist on our plate. And it also, in certain areas, it utilizes vacant land in neighborhoods that's slowly losing its population. This is a good opportunity to use that land and make it, or use it for a purpose, greater purpose. But there's also a lot of downside to urban farming. Because of the size of the land, you cannot produce huge quantity of food. So it's probably not practical to want it, or to try to feed everybody in an urban setting with only urban farming. So it cannot be a standalone solution. And the products are limited seasonally. So in the Boston area, for example, in the winter time, nothing really grows unless you have a hot house, which then involves energy to keep the hot house heated. And it does not allow the use of large machinery, which means that it's more labor intensive for people to manually maintain the farm, and therefore the produce may be more expensive because we need to pay the labor. And it's also prone to vandalism and contamination. So a lot of urban farms, if you see them, they try to have as tall the fences as possible, because it just doesn't make sense if you have tomatoes coming through season and somebody just take them all. And zoning laws in certain cities are not very friendly to animal husbandry. Like a lot of the areas in Chicago, they disallow roosters because they crow and make noises. But roosters are actually an essential part of chicken farming if you think about it in an ecological manner, because they are the ones fending off all the hawks or coyotes and etc. But without it, people have to invest in electric fences or other measures, which is sometimes costly and ineffective. And so, and then based on some of the problem posed for the urban farming, there are quite a few farmers and organizations that come up with solutions. And one of them is a market garden method. And it's actually, there's like lectures and lectures about it. But in the gist is that they, instead of trying to farm with a large tract of land, they try to very intensely manage a very small land. So they put a lot of fertilizer, they irrigated probably 1 or 2 acres of land, and they harvest it intensely with leafy greens. which allows for constant product flow and constant revenue. And therefore, instead of waiting for the tomatoes to grow and they'll pick 5 off of the vine every week, they can have 400 bags of lettuces every week, and therefore more profit. And then there's also the crop selection. Like urban farm needs to grow high value products instead of as opposed to low value, which is wheat or potatoes. So for example, if you go to the supermarket, a sprig of rosemary costs much more than a potato. So with their crop selection of mostly herbs or other highly sought after species, that's how they can also make the money side of things work. And they also need to expand the product market to come up with use of all parts of the produce. So for example, radishes, like we typically eat the root, and but radish leaves are also edible, although most people throw them away. And actually, and if you let the radish flower and go to seed, you could eat the pods too before it gets too old. But nobody knows about that, so nobody sell them. And if you ever plant a radish, it's actually pretty good pods. And then they also, the urban farms need community buy-ins to create a sense of identity and to promote the kind of a pride of the neighborhood, and therefore to prevent vandalism from happening. So, the next, we'll go start the case studies. So, the first one is Urban Habitat Chicago, which is the nonprofit that I volunteered in while I was in Chicago. And then the second one is a Growing Home, which has an urban farm. And the third one is the Rooftop, which is a sister company of my job. So, I'll go through that. So, the first one, the Forsyth Preparatory High School. So, this is a quick history. They built this high school as a specialized high school that you have to take a test to go in. But after they built it, the land next to it was previously a street and sanitation salt storage facility. So the land was very compacted and very high in salt content, and nobody wanted anything to do with it. But it is a risk for the school because there are homeless people that come wandering around, so they wanted to create an entity and make it into something much more enjoyable. So Urban Habitat Chicago put together a proposal, and along with the city and the school and a couple of suppliers, like concrete suppliers and landscaping suppliers, they started to put together a joy garden. And our Urban Habitat Chicago actually operates on virtually no budget, so everything has to be donated in kind, and as well as the labor. And we often joke about like we are going forward with a 100-year plan, and we're currently on year 7. Slowly, like every time there's a batch of concrete become available, we will hustle and bustle to get the forms ready so they could pour the concrete. And here it's after, I think, a year, along with the help of a landscape architect, we put together the plan and we worked with the school to form a gardening club. And the school, with its certain curriculum, they have a gardening colloquium. So every kid in the school is required to attend a colloquium, and we are part of the option that they can choose to participate in the third actualizer, which is the name they chose for themselves. So if you see high school students, so we teach them how to do carpentry, make forms, pour concrete, and how to build a pickaxe, how to plant plants, and you see there's like a couple of the past graduates there. And slowly, every Saturday, as well as every Wednesday during the colloquium period, we work on the joy garden. And then, so this is actually like 2 years ago taken, so you could see the pathway and like planting along with like certain foliage, which is like you could just go wander and be distracted if you are stressed out from schoolwork. And we also expanded the planting to over here, as well as like a little greenhouse to sprout seeds. And then further over here, which is what we were working on when I moved out of the city. It's like a actually more like planter bed style planting. And here you can see the kids laying pavers. So we also teach them how to use a circular saw safely to cut bricks. And so it is a lot of like basic skill set that people used to know back in the day, but nobody does anything like that in their spare time at home anymore. So, and it's actually quite an eye-opening experience for a lot of them. And in the winter time, when it's too snowy to go outside, we actually just teach them how to cook. So we're buying a lot of food, and we have a couple of like Foreman grills and burners, and I actually taught a cheese making class to them, in which we also go into the chemistry of protein when combined with acid. So it is pretty interesting that every skill set you could sort of tie it back to their curriculum in school. And then, so the next one is Growing Home. So Growing Home is a nonprofit that's set place in the Englewood neighborhood. And for those of you not familiar with Chicago, Englewood is the place that you don't really want to go and hang out. And it has gone through a period of, I guess, people just moved out and a lot of vacant houses. So as the city condemned and demolished them, there were just huge tracts and blocks of grass that the city had to maintain. So the founder of Growing Home, he worked with the city to set up 2 organic urban farms, actually. And their model is very interesting, that they work with ex-convicts, that people recently got out of prison. They had no job and no, I guess, potentials to be hired by a company, that they put them through job training as well as like food handling certification. So if they go through the Growing Home training program, they are then eligible to get jobs in either farms or restaurants. So it actually put through a couple classes of graduates that way to provide a job for them and also stability in the community to prevent the loss of population. And then, so here's a picture of them working. So this model is a highly intensive model, and because they have to balance their checkbooks. So they, in the previous, you could see their greenhouse, which is a little bit more energy intensive and more initial investment. But they do run a few farmers market, and they also actually have the farm in the suburbs, in which they supply to meet the demands of the restaurants that they work. And then there's like more pictures of the participants. Then go to the video. Here's the video of their that they put together to get a better idea.
By Les Brown, and this idea of working with people and giving them a real hands-on job opportunity through urban farming. We have a very holistic program using urban agriculture and food as a element.
For so many years, Inglewood has suffered a great deal. The job market was very poor. It was the highest employment rate in the community. In 2005, we convened the community, over 650 stakeholders, brought them around the table to create the first quality of life plan for the Inglewood community. That's when we began to develop a relationship with Growing Home.
When we got to Inglewood 10 years ago, there was this idea of doing an urban agriculture district, taking vacant lots, turning them into farms, really turning Inglewood from what's been called a food desert to a food destination. And in addition to the food, for us, what we see are jobs. Jobs for the people we train, jobs for the community.
Before going home, I didn't feel like I could get a job because I feel like my barriers will get in the way of getting employed. I've been arrested before. That made me hesitant to fill out applications. I was just going through day labor after day labor, no job, no permanent solutions. And then after going home, I feel like I can go to an interview and get the job right there.
When people go through the whole process of growing food, it really changes their lives.
Gardening is spiritual, and the young people that come here, I've watched them over the years. I've never seen anybody that seem to enjoy work more than they do. The training that they're getting, I just think it's wonderful. Not only for the individuals, but for the community at large.
10 years ago, none of this existed. Now we're seeing restaurants, cafes open up.
Before Kusani Cafe existed, there weren't those places. There weren't restaurants. There weren't kind of gathering places. We were really thinking about how could we get all the diverse cross-sections of England together. And we thought food is always the great thing. Food is the great connector. Growing Home has been involved with the cafe since the very beginning. They've worked with us on a lot of different things. They bring their produce, sell out on the street corner. It's cool to see people get excited so quickly about accessible produce and great produce coming right to the corner. We've also been talking a lot more with their employment program, possibly getting more, graduates to kind of come and work at the cafe.
Until now, there weren't jobs. Now, with these other businesses opening up, there's more opportunity. It's not what we're doing for people, it's the support that we can provide people and the opportunities to change their lives.
My name is Latisha Banner. My confidence level before Growing Homes was dead because I had been applying for jobs and I had the skills and I'd been to school. I wasn't getting hired and I couldn't figure out why we suffered. I think that only you would understand it when you're a parent. If you know what it's like to look at your kid and say, we're gonna drink some water for dinner tonight. I walked into the Chicago Urban League balling. And I walked in there, they signed me up for Growing Home, and it changed my life. Growing Home teaches work ethic, it teaches perseverance, it teaches confidence. So they introduced me to the skill set resume, and the skill set resume saved my kids' lives. I am a Uber driver, a Lyft driver. I sell Aflac insurance from home. People don't realize that programs like this is saving lives.
Things are really, really starting to look very positive for us because now some of the plans that were created are starting to really happen.
I'm realizing more and more now how much organizations like the cafe and kind of really need each other.
We've done a lot in Englewood. We're committed to this community. There's more land here. This year, we're training 50 people. We see down the line in another 10 years, training hundreds of people so that we can impact even more people's lives.
Growing Home was a turning point. That boosted my confidence up.
It taught me that as long as I kept pushing that I could do whatever I wanted to do. Who would have thought putting a doggone urban farm in the middle of the hood could change so many lives, but it did.
So that's their story, essentially in a couple of minutes. And that is a great example of how urban farming can act as a catalyst to promote the change of the neighborhood. And then the next up is, I borrowed this couple of slides from my boss, so it has her name under there. So I work for Omni Ecosystems, and we are a green roof company in which that we supply, we install, we maintain, and sometimes harvest plants on top of roofs. So it is a measure to reduce the urban heat island effect in the city, because if you're in the city, it's noticeably warmer than in the countryside because all the concrete structures around us that absorbs heat. And so, among with other things that's better for environment. And my boss had a stroke of genius a couple of years ago, and she set up another sister company to our green roof company to lease the green roofs that Omni Ecosystems install to farm the green roofs, because our system can be farmed and be harvested. So let's jump into it. So kind of an overview of green roof in a nutshell. So green roof, a typical green roof can reduce stormwater when it rains. The growing media under the plants, they absorb some water. So instead of all going down to the sewer line and flood the river, it can temporarily hold it there and slowly either through evaporation, release it back to the atmosphere, or at the later time, it brings it to the sewer line. And it reduces the urban heat island effect because the plant, as the water evaporates through the leaves, it cools down the surface of the roof. And then it decreases the building energy use because essentially it is adding a layer of blankets on top of it. So in the winter time, there are less heat escaping, and in the summertime, there are less heat coming into the building. And then increase the life of roof membrane because, as you all know, like when some plastic is sitting under the sun for a long period of time, it starts to become brittle and cracked. The roof membrane essentially goes through the same thing, but by putting plants on top of it, it covers it, prevents it, the degradation. And it improves air quality because there are plants, and it decreases noise because actually the additional layer does buffer some of the sound of the river. And it increases biological diversity. If you have plants, you tend to have butterflies or other insects that's attracted to the flowers, and also in that sense creates habitat. Well, that's a typical sedum green roof, which means that it's a thick leaf and it's very drought resistant, so it's highly popular in the green roof industry that they are able to plant them and just leave them. They will be irrigated only with natural rainfall, and they're also okay for climates that goes below 3. And but our Omni green roof, we're rethinking the idea of putting plants on roof. So instead of having sedum, which doesn't require any irrigation, we say, hey, what if we put in the irrigation at the start, but we're able to grow a lot more things. So we have, because of our proprietary growing media, we are lighter, which is typically an issue for many buildings because a heavy green roof needs a heavier structure, means more cost or more money for the steel. So a lighter weight is also always attractive, and it also was able to retain more water because of the media that we Mike Repkin from Urban Habitat Chicago invented the system along with my boss. And it has a greater biological diversity because we're able to put a myriad of plants species on there. And so in that sense, we have taller plants. So the typical cedar is probably 12 inches, but with the other plant species, we could get as tall as a 3 feet of plant matters and create a better zone of temperature buffer. And so in that sense, also faster payback period. Local food production, we are able to put carrots, radishes, and like all kinds of veggies. We're currently experimenting with anything and everything. And the idea of farming on the roof, as we see on the Growing Home video, it also creates jobs for people. And in that sense, it also reduces food miles and reduces food desert, and the occupants of the building can able to interact with the roof and therefore enjoy the biofluid impact, which is like hopefully makes you less stressed if you're encounter with nature more often. So this is actually a, I guess, Harvard School master plan rendering that they intend to put green roof on all of their buildings. And this is kind of like the vision of what they have. Actually, this past summer, we installed a green roof on the McCollum building. And so hopefully we might be back to Boston to install more. And this is another rendering of kind of what will cities be like if every building has a green roof. So it's a lot greener and hopefully a much friendlier place to live in. But in reality, a cedar roof, we tend to see it's more like this. Like not all of the surface is covered with plants because it's not irrigated, so they almost adopt a plant and leave it mentality. That they will put some planting and maybe they'll check on it once or twice a year to make sure the drain's not clogging and plants are sort of still alive. So we get actually a lot of calls from building owners who has a green roof that's installed by another company. But after 3-4 years, like some plants just doesn't make it if there's a severe drought in the summer. And it starts to become spotty and blotchy with the plant coverage. And for us, we do have a little bit more upfront cost because we installed an additional irrigation system, and we also say if you have our system, you need to have either an in-house person to maintain it, and your superintendent needs to know how to maintain a green roof, or you could sign a contract with us to maintain a green roof. So we will come back every month during the warm seasons to check on things to make sure it's still going okay and there's no epidemic failure. We did have a case where we planted grass on one of the roofs as the client's request, and a gaggle of Canadian geese came by during their migratory routes, and they ate all the grass, well, most of the grass. And so the superintendent called us like, hey, it's being eaten. So we actually ended up buying a plastic coyote and ship it to them through Amazon Prime. And we asked the superintendent to move it every day to simulate the real coyote activity, and the geese just never came back. So like we can, though we don't want to support large avian biodiversity. So we have found quite a bit of animal, like cats like to take naps on there. They could get there. Lots of sparrows, praying mantis, and we found one that's like this big one. And then we have also done a project on a homestead pizzeria in Chicago, which is unfortunately no longer in business. But during its time, we worked with the chef to plan like a list of the vegetables over there. And it is very intense that the chef was the one who was very personally invested in making it work. So we're able to just experiment with them, and he would put all the produce on the pizza or blend it into the salad. And so here's a couple action shots, I guess. So this is Mike like harvesting potatoes, and he would joke about the potato head harvesting the potato. And it's my boss with the rooftop daikon radish. And so here is another project that we did that it's 3 inches deep of growing media, and we planted a blend of cover crop and kale. So in here, the seedlings are really small. You can see like it's kind of like the row over here. There's a couple down here. And in the month, you could start to see the kale is growing. And like a couple of months later, you see this giant kale growing. And we actually got a complaint from the building owner because he doesn't know what to do with all that kale. Way more than what he usually cooks. And so here's the pizzeria again. So along with the herbs and the produce over here, we actually also did vertical planters to produce more of the decorative flowers for the outdoor dining area. And then here is our headquarters that we worked with the building owner to renovate last year. And it's actually my first project that after I joined the company. So here you see it's completely blank. They have just put in the roof anchoring and in April. And in May, after we put in our growing media and seeded it, you could start to see the peach fuzz growing up. And this is in August. Oh, actually, back here is also our farmer, Will, who's in charge of farming the rooftop. Sorry, one more. And then we actually put in some fruit trees along the building front belt over here. And actually they made 1 apple this year. Because typically fruit trees takes like 4 to 5 years to actually be producing. And so we were quite surprised that they were ready to be making apples. So this is August. November, so it's like this is when it starts to die down slowly. But and underneath that roof, we have a facility to process and package all the produce that we have done. We are not certified organic, but that's something that we're looking at. And then this is another project that we did is that we did it so late in the fall that it was soon to be in freezing weather. So in our attempt to make sure everything sprouts properly, we put down a lot of wheat as recommended by Mike, who is a microbiologist by training, but also a landscape designer in his life afterward. And so anyway, we've gotten a lot of wheat in this around May of this year, and we were there for our maintenance visit. We're like, oh no, what should we do with all this wheat? And we decided to harvest it. So we work with, in conjunction of another nonprofit, which is called After School Matters, that works with high school students in underserved areas to teach them skills or expose them to just parts of the, I guess, topics that they don't get in their neighborhood. So Mike enlisted some of the students in the program, and together they manually harvested all the wheat, and they actually made it into chocolate chip cookies as an event, PR event for our company. And we pay them, and we were able to actually turn this into a an event that we managed to get the mayor to come visit us. So here you see this is the mayor, Ron Emanuel, in our warehouse, and you have the students who participated. I'm showing him how like a mock-up of the green roof and how it will work. And actually, so besides all the business end of it, this is actually what drives me, I guess, to continue urban farming in general, and also with my job, is that to have a kid who has never seen most of the touristy parts of Chicago. A lot of kids from the west side, they have never seen Lake Michigan, despite Chicago's right on Lake Michigan. To be able to show and talk to the mayor, this is like the biggest thing that they will remember, and when they have to make the decision, this empowers them, in my opinion, to believe in themselves, and therefore, I guess, in their future, they are able to be more confident in life. So that's that. And then there's a couple of interesting reads and resources as I came across as I'm putting this presentation together. There's like how we used to live, and of how our thinking of living changed the actual structure of how we live, and how we used to eat, like cook by Michael Pollan. And there's a couple of planting theories that for those gardeners out there, you might be interested. There's a square foot gardening, which is a good primer if you want to get into gardening, but I'm not sure how to. And there's a market gardener that I talked about before, and he has a pretty thorough business plan for a farm in his book. There's a permaculture, which is a theory of farming that focuses more on polyculture. Instead of a single crop, you can plant multiple species all in the same space, and therefore be beneficial for all of the plants involved. And then there's a one straw revolution by Masanobu Fukuoka, who actually kind of pushed for urban farming in Japan after the World War II, and it's worth reading. And then for seeds, if you're into heirloom species, like going back to the farmstead days, that people save their seeds, and through generations, like every family have their own unique set of seeds. So like Aunt Molly's tomatoes may be striped with yellow stripes, but like another aunt might specialize in like the giant green tomatoes that taste great. So those are heirloom plants that with the monoculture farming, the heirloom seeds were dwindling, but the seed savers exchange, they promote the heirlooms. And then how I personally started this whole thing, it's a Urban Habitat Chicago, and check it out. So that's it.
How would you say, like, with the clients that you work with, are they more like, I have a new building and I add something to this, or people with like older buildings?
I always see them both. In Chicago, and I think a lot of the bigger cities, it's mandated if you have a new building of a certain size, you need to either put solar panel or have a green building. But in the older building, currently it's not required because most of the time the structure is not sufficient to support the additional heavy weight. So we see both, and the advantage of our system, which is how we market out the company, is that we're able to put remove on the older structure because other companies' remove system are heavier.
What's the best way to distribute urban farm produce?
If it's set up within the food desert, it's very easy to have a farm stand. So the local residents will just come and purchase the food. Or if you are able to work with another like soup kitchen, for example, for elderly or disabled, disadvantaged people, population, that's another way to introduce food into the food desert zone.
Because on the rooftop farming, is there a limitation? Like you said, you can grow fruit trees, but probably not much. And with the big grow too big to be able to stay there.
Right. So for that, the ones that we put on our roof in our headquarters, we will actually trim them aggressively, so it will never produce as much as if it was planted on the ground, but it will produce some. And there's another project that we did actually on the roof where we have all the wheat. The client came to us and said, "We like to put a 10-year-old tree on our rooftop," and they were like, "You're kidding me," because the tree is actually, the roof ball is like this big of a round and it's like 20 feet tall. But we were able to work with them to put it right on top of where the columns are underneath. So it's a direct load, so it doesn't have as much of the detrimental effect. And then we were like, all right, you put it on, like, good luck. Like, we can't guarantee the trees health. We could guarantee the rest of the roof. But, yeah.
What's the coolest thing you've seen grown on the roof?
Coolest thing I have seen growing on the roof. I think the daikon radish is pretty cool because it will grow in very shallow area, and the daikon radish typically gets this long. So instead of trying to burrow down or split, it actually will push itself out of the ground. So you will go on the green roof and you'll see like this top of the daikon radish and the leaves sticking out. So that's pretty neat.
So are the customers like building owners, or they are like tenants as well?
We typically work with building owners only because if you're renting, it's hard to say, hey, we're gonna put lots of stuff on your roof. And so typically work with building owners or a developer who's in charge of like realizing the project. I could make her. Yes. It is easier on flat roofs, and we have done like slightly pitched roof, and I think we have done one up to like 30-degree pitch, but that we cannot harm so much, but it's just more of a safety issue and more of a stability issue.
And do all the plants and do they all hold through the winter in Chicago?
We have two blends two types of plant in our seed blend. Like some of them are annual, which means that they will flower and seed, and the seed in the winter time they will sort of sow themselves, and sometimes they will come up next year. And we also plant perennials, which means that once they establish, they will keep on coming back over the winter.
So in winter, they are probably covered by snow, and then after the snow melts away, they just come out again.
Yes. Yeah, and in the winter time, they do go brown. During like after some frost, they just kind of collapse like your yard, I guess.
And you said that sometimes a person will learn some technique from you, and then they can maintain themselves these plants.
Yes.
And what kind of training do they get?
So typically it's like we tell them what kind of plants they are expected to see.
Okay.
And if you see like dandelion, that's like we obviously did not put that on. But sometimes it like sticks to your shoes as you're getting up and down, or it gets blown up. So we teach them how to identify the non-targeted species, aka weeds. And we also teach them how our irrigation system works. And like in every winter, you have to blow out the irrigation system. So that's like the thing that we teach them. But besides that, our system are pretty regenerating. So with the perennial plants.
So when you're doing more like early farming, and you're kind of like medicinal products, do they people usually use fertilizer, and if they do, is there any impact on like the
Wait, on the roof or on the cradle?
like in the urban.
So they should. Well, there is two types of fertilizer. One is like fast acting, and one is slow releasing. So in the urban farm, actually in any farm, you should really use like organic based acid, like decomposed plant material and manures, like composted manures and shy away from the chemicals in most cases, because those fast-acting chemicals, if you put it in and it rains, and it tends to, as you said, like wash down into our sewer system and create the algae blooms. So there are fertilizers that will not create that issue. So you just have to choose wisely what to put in. And there's a lot of plants actually. So like peanuts and beans, they are great nitrogen fixers naturally. So if you have the time, you can just plant a lot of alfalfa, beans, and like legumes, and cut them down and let them decompose, and they will actually be the fertilizer, provide nutrient for your actual crop. Or like household yard waste also is great too, or like composting of your food waste, like food scraps. Yeah. Yes.
How much money does a green save?
How much money? It depends. So, but we did a study, and I don't have any pictures of it, that in a typical bare roof in the winter time, the roof goes through the freeze-thaw cycle. So it dips below freezing and sort of thaws a certain day and then freezes again. And if you have green roof, it actually never dips into the freeze-thaw zone. And in the summertime, the roof with green roof actually stays around 70, 80 degrees versus a bare roof will go more than 100 degrees under the direct sun. So in that sense, it does save quite a bit of money.
Do you also do the farming on like surfaces like balcony or like larger balcony?
We have not. Well, for our business model, we're currently, since it's the second year of the farming side of the root crop, we have a criteria that it has to be over like 1,000 square feet, and currently we only lease land for people who are near our headquarters, because we do like go probably once a week or more. So we're slowly trying to figure it out our business model, because so far it's like we have a certain size apartment. Oh. Okay. Any questions? All right, well, I'd like to thank you. We'll hang out here. Any other questions that you think of? All right, thank you, Robert. Oh, I won't wait. Sorry.